This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat. The participants are K.V. Prasad, political analyst, and Nilab Srivastav, journalist.
It was the 79th edition of the monthly Mann Ki Baat address of Prime Minister Narendra Modi that is relayed to the country by the All India Radio. This is a platform where the Prime Minister talks about the extraordinary, the even usual but underreported, unsung heroes, innovators, young and old enthusiasts, new initiatives, social events, the human strength and its fortitude, and probably every subject under the sun. Today was not different, and the PM spoke for about just over 30 minutes and started his address with the talk of the ongoing Tokyo Olympics and the Indian sportsperson who are participating. He also urged the listeners to promote the Victory Punch campaign that has been initiated by the government. The country is still relishing and feeling proud about the silver medal that has come only yesterday, which has been won by weightlifter Mirabai Chanu. Then the Prime Minister went on to speak about the Kargil Vijay Divas, which is going to be observed tomorrow on July 26th. And this is observed every year to celebrate the 1999 victory against the Pakistan war and tributes to the soldiers who have laid down their lives in the line of duty. The Prime Minister also shared his thoughts on India now entering into the 75th year of its independence on August 15. And that is where the Prime Minister spoke at length and also talked about the nation first and always first. Mr. Prasad, I think that was one of the important points where PM addressed the country about.
Yeah, I think you're right. One of the larger issues, if you look at it, the Prime Minister tries to connect a lot of things within the framework of his 25-30 minutes talk to the people in his Mann Ki Baat, which is now extremely popular over the last so many. You already mentioned the number. I think the Connect India is something, again, a unique project that he has suggested that Indians, and he connected it to the Quit India, which was observed in 1942, and August 9th is always is the Quit India Day. And he said from Quit India, Bharat Chodo, we are now to do Bharat Jodo, which means Connect India or Bind India. This, I think, is again a very innovative kind of an idea. We want the entire country, its diversity, its people, its different cultures, different traditions, all to try and build up a big, large mosaic that is known India as Bharat. So I think that's one of the key takeaways, as you rightly pointed out. Of course, Olympics is the flavor of the month. Most Indians are riveted to what's happening in Tokyo, especially when there are no crowds at the stadium. I think the Victory Punch campaign adds to the josh of the players, as we call it, when they are out on the field trying to cover themselves with glory and also trying to bring laurels to the country. Win or lose is not the issue, as the motto of Olympics says. It is participation that matters. That has been the motto, along with faster, swifter and stronger.
Also, when we talk about the various individuals who are doing something exceptional in different walks of life, the Prime Minister spoke about a gentleman called Sai Praneeth. He has been preparing some weather updates and climatic conditions for the local farmers. If I'm correct, this was in Karnataka. Also, some of the technical brains in connection with the IIT Madras setting up a 3D printing house. So I think the initiatives that were described and probably mentioned by Prime Minister this time were also focusing on the kind of human initiatives that people are taking. He has mentioned that we need to promote indigenous technology under the Atmanirbhar Bharat or the Self-Reliant India campaign. So these were some of the subjects that the Prime Minister spoke about.
I think this has been a trademark of the Prime Minister in Mann Ki Baat, where he actually brings out the excellence or the contribution of individuals in various fields. As you pointed out in your opening remark, the unsung heroes or heroines, whose names probably do not figure in a day-to-day conversation, but are making a difference in the lives of people around themselves, which it may be a small town, as you mentioned, Sai Praneeth, getting the meteorological data and trying to help farmers in the southern part of India, especially Andhra in particular, neighboring areas. Then, of course, he also talked about Isaac Munda, a tribal person who has become famous by his YouTube of making Odia dishes. So that's again a local flavors going global. That's one way of it. And he also talks of the two young couple from Manipur, an aeronautic engineer, Rangphani Young, and his wife Angel, who went all the way to Himachal to learn about apple cultivation. And the Prime Minister rightly says, normally when we think of apples, we think of Himachal and Jammu Kashmir as the two most popular destinations where they arrive to the rest of the country. Now Manipur is, thanks to this, is on the map of apple cultivation. Similarly, he also talks of bear. And all of us remember in childhood and many a time, it's a berry of kind which is available at every nook and corner and had in a variety of ways. How that has been adding to somebody's kitty. So all these are interesting. So this is unsung heroes. And I think the biggest tribute was to the person who vends what is a popular dish in North India, the chole bhature, going around on a bicycle selling his wares on the streets of Chandigarh. How he has, thanks to his daughter and niece, combined it with the inoculation campaign, a social service that young vendor of his nature, whose earnings may not be very high in terms of revenue, but he has decided to give free dish to anybody who gets inoculated. Now that's a laudable service-oriented approach that came to the notice of Prime Minister. So I think these are some of the things, and also of course a lady from Kunnur who has started which is an ambulance, what you call is something which has been innovated to ensure in the hills of Nilgiris, people do not suffer on account of lack of ambulance when they need in terms of medical emergency. So Nilab, these are some of the issues which, as I mentioned and you mentioned, people who don't normally figure in a day-to-day conversation, but are making a difference to lives around them.
I will bring you back to what you mentioned about the 75 years of independence now coming 15th August, the country is entering an Amrit Mahotsav as the government has proposed it to be. At that point, the Prime Minister also speaks about the vocal for local, Mr. Prasad, that we should be promoting the kind of local artisans or the handicraft manufacturers. He also gave an example of the sales of khadi now skyrocketing since it is being promoted and being used by people at large now. So I think this is all clubbed with the aim of promoting self-reliance in the country also, and also ensuring that the livelihoods of our own artisans and people who are somewhere not probably in the limelight, somewhere in remote locations, are also get promoted, and people ensure a kind of an ecosystem where not only you get to use something which is very good or probably comes from your own background where you will come from, but also promoting the artisans in such a way that they also get to earn their livelihoods.
If you remember India's freedom struggle, Gandhiji took to handloom, khadi as a major source of connecting to people and also turning aside the British cotton mills. I mean, at one point of time, there was a thing when the spin of charkha stopped the wheels in Birmingham, where the cotton mills were located in UK. So that is inextricably woven into India's freedom struggle and history of freedom struggle. And today, as the Prime Minister pointed out, that since 2014, when he started his first, in his episode of Mann Ki Baat, he talked about khadi and how each individual can help khadi and in turn help the artisans, people whose livelihood is based on khadi. The sales have crossed 1 crore, which is something significant. Khadi was always there, but it's a question of now trying to enter into on a daily, everyday life. And I think this is something that the Prime Minister ever so often refers to when he talks about khadi in particular, and see how best it can be weaved into day-to-day usage so that the sales go up, the people who are dependent on it, a whole lot of the supply chain system which comes largely from the rural background or in the tier 2 or tier 3 cities of the country. So it also helps the economy in the backyards of our country. So I think this is very significant. But what I really looked at is the way he connected the Olympic, the tricolor, the Kargil Vijay Divas, the Amrit Mahotsav, and also remembered of the Moirang Day in Manipur, where Colonel Shaukat Malik of Indian National Army unfurled the national flag. And then finally asking the people to come for the national anthem campaign. He said many more. You talked about Amrit Mahotsav, and he said many more such campaigns will be rolled out during the course of the year, so that people look at these campaigns and find themselves in the fervor of nationalism, because he mentions that as a major issue.
The Prime Minister also, Mr. Prasad, took the listeners across the globe to Georgia, where one incident which has happened few days back, he informed the listeners about it, and he called it, if I can quote from what he said, that this was very interesting and a very emotional event. And this was where the relics of the Saint Queen Ketevan of Georgia was handed over to the government and the people of that country. And Mr. S. Jaishankar, who's the Foreign Affairs Minister, he himself was present there, and this was a very emotional moment. So he also spoke about the kind of mutual relations and the friendship that India has with different countries across the globe.
I think what you pointed out, many of us remember seeing visuals and news reports coming out of Georgia when Jaishankar visited the place, personally taking the relics. There is, of course, the Prime Minister did recall the history behind it and how it was in 2005 that these relics were discovered due to painstaking research by Indian researchers supported by the people from Georgia. And it was something, so part of those relics, we could see visuals of how people were emotionally moved to receiving that of Saint Queen Ketevan. Suketivan. So all these are important, and the Holy Relic holds a special place for people there. And remember, India has had a very long relationship with many of these Central Asian republics earlier through the Soviet Union, and then also when they became independent countries. So that is something unique. And when you talked about foreign affairs, this Mann Ki Baat also touches upon another important aspect, probably you also know, where he talked about the Silat Road Gurdwara in Singapore, inaugurated by Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong. So I think that's a very significant milestone in bilateral relationship.
Apart from these subjects, the Prime Minister is speaking about water conservation. And there are certain government schemes also that have been introduced with regard to the conserving water, the water table going down, and the kind of challenges that water bodies now face. So one of the more important concerns also that the PM speaks in his Mann Ki Baat address.
There is no way you can say this is overstressed. It has to be stressed time and again to remember and remind people the importance of conservation of water. And I think what very significantly points out that this is boon from the Mother Nature for successive generations, for future generations. So we are not here to just exploit the Mother Nature and its Mother Earth. We should also conserve so that we give healthy planet to the next generation. So in which he talks about the need to conserve rainwater. And this again, if you remember many episodes ago, he talked about the importance of check dams, importance of traditional baulis, which have storing rainwater in many parts where water is scarce, and especially in the arid zones of India, how traditional check dams, traditional water conservation techniques were adopted over the years. Somehow down the line, people have either forgotten those things. So revival of water bodies remains a major policy decision, a policy initiative of the government. And I think even in the budgets have been supporting this issue. This is one of the best times to recharge those water tables. I think that, as I said, can never be overstressed at this point.
Among all this, the PM, while signing off in the end, also did say that he wished the country for the upcoming festivals, but reminded that the COVID-19 pandemic is still here. It has not gone away. He underlined that the fact that COVID-appropriate behavior has to be exhibited by every one of us is still very important.
Absolutely. COVID-appropriate behavior remains paramount importance. Because we all just have come out of the brutal second wave, and we remember the devastation it caused around. So it's in the fitness of things, the Prime Minister reminded people, please do not lower the guard. I mean, while vaccination process is on, it is one aspect of it. People need to protect themselves by wearing those masks, avoiding crowds, and also keeping the safe distances that are required. And now with the scientific community warning that there could be a third wave in the offing, I think every responsible citizen has to do this contribution for the society. While the wheels of economy have to move on, at the same time, COVID-appropriate behavior is very, very important. And if you remember, Neela, maybe last week or so when they were reviewing this thing, the Prime Minister did mention about holidaying in the hills, where we have seen those visuals of the crowds thronging the hill stations. So that's how you have to look at it.
This day is approaching August 7. The PM said that this is the National Handloom Day, and he urged the countrymen, again, what you spoke about, the self-reliant kind of an initiative and to promote local artisans. The Prime Minister said that these are a major source of income in rural regions, and he urged the people to purchase these particular products, mark the National Handloom Day as now being witnessed in the Khadi domain. So I think very important to ensure that every one of us, by some way or the other, contribute in this particular domain.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, he reminded people that August 7th, it was on 1905 when the Swadeshi Andolan began on this day. So National Handloom Day, again, as I mentioned earlier, handloom and khadi has been inextricably woven into the Indian freedom struggle. So I think it is linked to it, and August 7th follows August 15th. So it's in a week's time, and handloom remains, khadi remains, stepped out of just being part of the day-to-day routine wear of people who are only in politics as at one point of time. I think khadi has increasingly found acceptance in almost every walk of life. Cities, towns, that is something, there is a branding of khadi which is of different nature. Branding, when I meant, it's a fabric that's worn by everybody across the strata. So I think that's what thing, as I mentioned, the sales of khadi have gone up. Handloom itself is a major source of income, as you pointed out, and the whole supply chain that depends on it.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, Mr. Prasad.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat. The participants were K.V. Prasad, political analyst, and Nilav Srivastav, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.